Good morning. It's Sunday, April the 2nd, 2023. And the spring break party has begun down here at the beach. Don't think of it as your typical Floridian style of beach. This is the Pacific coast of Washington State. Me and my friend JR are here for an 8-day backpacking trip along Olympic National Park's Wild Coast. We actually started the trip yesterday on April 1st. And because our tide window was so late in the day, it was a low water at 4:30 p.m., and we needed to get around Diamond Head, which requires a tide lower than 2 foot to get around its rocks. We just got started later, and we didn't end up getting to our camp here at Mosquito Creek until after dark. Sarah could not join us on this trip. She had to work all week. And so she drove us up here, dropped us off. She hiked in as far as Diamond Head just to make sure we could get around it. And then she drove home. She's gonna meet us at the end of the trip at Shi Shi Beach, pretty much 7.5 to 8 days from now, to pick us up. But I am sharing this trip with my good friend JR. We've done several backpacking trips together, and I'll let you meet him here in just a second.
I'm JR. Today is day 2 of our backpacking adventure. We're just moseying along the Pacific Northwest coast of Washington State. This is actually my first time on a beach in the Pacific Northwest. Actually physically being present and on a beach. He asked about my first reaction. I was just in awe. I was just blown away, taken away, just engulfed with all the spirits, all of the ancestors of this land, all the geography of this land. Just enveloped me, challenged me, but it was successful. I'm stoked to continue this long adventure. It's a fantastic way to spend our break.
What makes this trip so different, so special, is it's the first time I've ever attempted to do the coast, south to north, in one continuous push. It always feels really good when a brand new backpacking trip is fresh and it's just started. Really excited to see how JR and I take on the challenges and the different variables of hiking the entire Olympic coast in the early spring. Here's our camp at Mosquito Creek. It's high tide down there right now. The waves are pretty big and doing a good job at pounding away at the beach. Gotta wait for it to go down a little bit before we move further up the coast. It looks like it might rain again here in just a moment. Did a pretty good job at staying dry last night. All right, we have successfully forded Mosquito Creek. It was bone-chilling cold. It feels really good now to be out of it. The feet are warming up nicely. We're heading northwest up the coast. Totally Point. We're going to spend the night tonight. After the second but shorter overland routes of the South Coast, we have emerged at this next beach, and we are within a mile of our next camp, which makes for a much shorter day than what we experienced yesterday. We are heading off in that direction there, towards Luii Point. We get to set up camp right when we get around that point of land right there. This trip is all about dreams coming true. On the drive here, I was telling JR that I hoped we found a dead whale laying on the beach. Well, here's my dead whale. I don't know what species it is. It doesn't smell really bad from this angle, but I looked up and there it was. We are rounding this corner as we arrive at Luii Point. And it's just a really beautiful moment right now. We're kind of on cloud 9 after our discovery a few minutes ago. And we're just going to slip onto this side of the point here. Find our place to set up camp. Right down over in that direction. Camp is all set for our second night at Luii Point. The sun is just now dropping below some dark clouds. We're getting some amazing warmth in some of its last rays as it dips low to the horizon over there. We should get a pretty incredible sunset from this vantage point here.
solid ice on the tent this morning.
Well, good morning. It is Monday, April the 3rd. It's the third morning of the trip so far. It's a very clear, frozen, cold night. The moon was beautiful, in contrast with the waves hitting the shore. I had to go for a walk down the beach last night. We've decided to spend morning and afternoon here at camp, relaxing. Breakfast is cooking right now, and we're just gonna enjoy ourselves. We are gonna take the afternoon tide window to our next camp. We need a low of at least 4 foot or lower to get around our next obstacle, and that won't happen till 3 p.m. this evening. So we got quite a time to wait, and sit out this flood tide that's moving in pretty quickly here. Nice, relaxing morning and early afternoon. Drying equipment out, eating, watching the water. 3 o'clock p.m. has finally arrived, and our tide window is now open. We don't have very far to go today, just a couple miles north of the coast. And we get to camp at Scott Creek, backcountry camp. Ready? Ready. All right, here we go. All right, after a couple of miles of beach walking, we have arrived at Scott Creek Backcountry Camp. We've got the tents all set up, and for once on this trip, we have plenty of time to kind of relax in the evening after arriving at our destination.
All right, JR, it's the third night, the last night of the South Coast portion of the trip. What do you think so far?
I have been overwhelmed a lot just by what this Pacific Northwest coast has to offer. Everything is just so beautiful. It's just, that's all I can say. I've just been overwhelmed and in awe. I'm excited to see what the North has for us, and what I can take away from the trip as a whole.
Good morning. I'm just finishing breakfast under the cover of my shelter. It's raining pretty hard out right now, and we need to pack up camp relatively soon here to have enough time to do what we need to do today. Alright, the rain has finally stopped for the moment, and now the rush. Get packed up and get out of here.
Good morning. It is the fourth day of the trip. Camp is all packed up. We are ready to leave Scott Creek. Crazy story. Last night when I was busy with camp chores and getting the fire going, the wind was picking up. And I'm pretty sure it blew away my camera case because I realized it was gone, and we looked frantically all around camp into the dark, could not find it. It was a humongous mystery. You know, we just decided to just forget it. We stood by the fire, watched the moon rise, went to bed. High tide came throughout the night and went, and then this morning I looked around again. As soon as camp was packed up, I walked right down here by the banks of Scott Creek, and there was my camera case. And it ended up probably in the creek, and then in the Pacific, and then the tide brought it in and washed it ashore last night. Just letting it dry out. Good to go. We don't have far to go this morning. We're just gonna go over this inland route. We'll drop down to that beach, and then we're gonna go up over that second wooden inland route, and then we'll drop down to Third Beach. That is the end, the South Coast portion of the Olympic coast. this third beach. You can also see the reason why we have these overland routes, because a place like that would be impassable right now. And it's kind of a theme of the South Coast. A lot of really long overland routes. Not so much as we continue north. Good afternoon. It is the mid-afternoon hours, April the 4th, 2023. JR and I successfully completed the South Coast, linked up with the truck, went into town for a bit, resupplied, came back to Mora. We've already hiked the easy cobblestone beaches of Rialto Beach all the way to this point. And we are poised and ready to start the North Coast section. This stretch of coast is much longer and has a lot more challenging sections coming up. There's 3 really big sections of rocks, tide pools, and not as much nice sandy beaches as there were on the South Coast. We also don't have a very good weather forecast going into this trip. Today is supposed to be the nicest day that we can see in the forecast. We got a couple days coming up where about a ½ inch of rain each day falling out of the sky. But you never know what'll happen in springtime. We can have all types of weather in a single day. We're just waiting it out a little bit, for the tide to drop a little bit more so that we can go through Hole in the Wall. And once we go through Hole in the Wall, we actually have one of the hardest days of the route coming up. Altogether, the North Coast leg of this journey should take us 5 days and 4 nights. And Sarah plans on meeting us for our last night at Shi Shi Beach. We'll all end it and hike out together on Easter Sunday. More whale evidence. A giant bone just laying here in these tide pools. Don't know what part of the anatomy it is though. Just a little bit down the trail, there's more parts of the skeleton scattered about
Looks like a rib right here, and I'm thinking the other bone is a part of its head, either the lower or upper jaw. Alright, we are almost at Chilean Memorial Backcountry Camp. We're going to get some water there and continue on and go around Cape Johnson. All right, we have rounded Cape Johnson. And it's a pretty incredible view all around, but we can see where we're going. We are heading for that sandy beach beyond that last bluff over there. We just got this last cove to navigate.
Or do you recommend one?
We have rounded the last rocky point. We have arrived at the beach. I was hoping to look for a place to set up a camp. So we're going to continue on up this beach here until we find a suitable and safe place.
All right, after a very long day of hiking, we found a place to call home for the night. Took into consideration landslide potential. We think this area is a little safer than others. Fresh water source is right down there behind us. How high the tide is going to come up around midnight tonight. We think that right up here underneath and behind these big pieces of driftwood is going to be sheltered. The water is coming up just down over here, and it's just going to come up a little bit higher than it was last night. We're also taking into consideration that a pretty big storm is supposed to move in overnight or sometime tomorrow. Dump a bunch of rain, might get a little windy. So we picked spots right here behind these pieces of driftwood that might offer some protection from wind, you know. But at some point we're gonna have to pack up tomorrow in the wet with sand caking everything and make our way north to our next camp. Good thing though is most of the hard terrain is now behind us. A lot of miles with a lot of slippery rocks are over with, and we have a lot of nice sandy beaches to cover tomorrow to get to our next camp.
Camp is set. Just a tad bit nervous though. I hope the water doesn't come up at high tide in the middle of the night and during a rainstorm. Force me to have to move my camp further up. We'll just see what happens though. I'll be on high alert until the water starts to ebb in the middle of the night. Good morning. It's the 5th day of the trip, and we survived the night in our sheltered camps up here above the tide line. I was a little paranoid that the water was going to take me away, and I moved my tent once closer up to the seawall, and that was really uncomfortable sleeping. And then about 4 in the morning I moved it back once the tide was well down. Kind of just lounging around camp and enjoying breakfast at the moment.
p.m. We've had camp packed up for several hours now, just waiting to dry in our packs. You know, we've been doing a lot of waiting on the water to go down, and that time has arrived. High tide was about an hour ago, and it's dropping pretty quickly. Just our luck, like a switch, the weather has turned on, and it's getting a bit breezy off the southwest part of the ocean, and we're about to head north up the coast a little further. We're going to try and make it to that first headland right there. Maybe wait a sec there for the water to drop a bit more. And then when it gets to where we want it, we're going to cross over and head to Norwegian Memorial, where we'll spend our next night in the backcountry. It really shouldn't take us that long to get to our next camp. It's only about 3 to 4 miles away from here, and most of that is over flat, sandy beach. Only a couple spots the tide needs to be really low to get around. It is a very scenic stretch. Looking forward to it. Here we go.
A lot of timing waves just right to make it around some of these obstacles. That raven was over here eating this dead sea otter. Alright, well, we found another carcass. This one is some type of seal. Its skull was still intact and laying very close to it, so I repositioned it. We have hand sanitizer. passing around this last set of sea cliffs for the day. And there's our bountiful tide pools all around out here on this point. And a lot of the sea stacks we were just walking through are behind us now. And I can see Norwegian Memorial Camp, and that's where we're staying tonight. It looks really calm and peaceful. It's up in those trees over there. Just kind of mentioning how the whole scenery has changed coming around this corner, looking to the north. Alright, we have made it to the Norwegian Memorial Backcountry Camp. It is a very well furnished camp with lots of amenities. We plan to make ourselves at home. Plan to use as much of this as we can during our short stay at this lovely place. This place comes complete with kitchen, fire pit, and a nice comfy sofa from which to watch live action entertainment. Camp is set for the 5th night stay here at Norwegian Memorial. I have tried looking for the memorial and I cannot find it. I don't even know if it exists anymore. That is 2 fires on this trip I have made with fire plugs. It's the fire starter I used. And using semi-damp wood, not really the driest. You just got to look in the right places. Let's see if I can get this going, get a nice bed of coals to last us the evening.
Well, good morning. It is the beginning of the 6th day of the trip up the Olympic coast. After a very warm and comfortable, drippy night here at Norwegian Memorial, we're all packed up super early this morning so we can catch the morning tide window. We have till about 11:15 to make it 5 miles up the coast, but there's a lot more challenges today. We have the second biggest stretch of slick rocks and boulders and scrambling to go. There's very little sandy beach coming up, which means you just got to take your time and be careful where we put our feet and move slowly. There's still a lot of incredible sections up ahead. Slowing down just forces you to take in all the details around you. We are camping at Yellow Banks tonight. It's a really cool spot. One of my favorite places to stay last year. Here we go.
This beach does have a name. It is called Kaosla Beach. And it was like half nice sand and half boulders and cobbles and rocks. It's a pretty good view looking down the coast from here. At high tide and during rough water, it moves these baseball to bowling ball sized rocks smashes them repeatedly against the sandstone head wall here. And over many, many, many years, it smashes a hole in the rock and gives you a hole in the wall, or an arch. There's quite a few of them along the Olympic coast. It was at this point that my camera audio stopped working properly and would remain in and out for the remainder of the trip. We continued for miles over slippery rocks, arriving at Yellow Banks in the middle of a major Pacific storm. Last year at Yellow Banks, I fell in love with its tide pools. This year, being tent-bound through the storm, all afternoon and evening, JR and I watched large waves roll in and break right below our camp. During the ebb, the waves got even bigger and more powerful. The cold metallic blue of these turnpipes mesmerized us both, giving a special appreciation for the power of the Pacific Ocean.
Good morning. It is dawn, the 7th day of our trip up the Olympic coast. We're all packed up, ready to go really early to catch the morning tide window. It is a negative 0.8 foot this morning, so it's getting really, really low for the morning tide and not being as low for the afternoon. So for the rest of this trip, we do plan on making our moves up the coast during the morning tides. We are both looking really forward to staying here at Yellow Banks. There's some really cool tide pools. It's a really nice place to stay if it's not raining. We pretty much just ended a day and a half straight of light to heavy rain. Pretty stormy at times. It was pretty much that low pressure system we were worried about kind of made landfall yesterday, and it stayed around all day. True to the fickleness of Pacific Northwest weather though, the minute we got all of our stuff dripping wet packed up in our packs, it stopped raining. And there's a few slight sun breaks now. I can see out over the ocean there's a few patches of blue sky. So whoever is looking out for us somewhere is being heard, and we could really use some sunshine right now to dry out our things. Not that hard of a day today. We're going to make a way around this point of land, head up to Sandy Point, and then continue on to Cape Olava, and then a little bit past that is the Ozette River. That's where we'll be spending night number 7 on the north banks of the Ozette River. Here we go.
Don't know if you can make it out, but way off in the distance is Snag Island, which was to the north of us when we first started the North Coast. And then that point of land right out there, center frame, we rounded that yesterday. And you can kind of see the cove that Yellow Banks is in. And then this stretch of beach here, very wide and open. I had never walked this before until today. And now we're about to go around Sand Point. After rounding Sand Point, you get this view looking north. And this also begins the third, and I hope last, long section of rocks we have to walk over. Cape Olava is that cape point, center frame right there. I think it's about 3 miles from here to there. It didn't take long to hike the 3 miles between Sand Point and Cape Alava. This beach ended up not being as rocky and slippery as others. Cape Alava is a special place, and I wish I had more time to explore the area. I always seem to be passing through. It is a significant cape. In 1970, a Macaw longhouse settlement was discovered. Its artifacts are currently on display in a museum in Nia Bay. It is also the furthest west we travel along the route. As you round the cape, views of Cape Flattery, Point of the Arches, and Vancouver Island come into view. The last challenges of the final leg of the journey become apparent. Along the way to our next camp at North Ozette River, we encountered more slippery rocks, large boulders, and sea stacks that we were not expecting. This leg of the journey was all new to us and added to the flavor of the adventure, kind of like walking into our own unknown. The Ozette River must be forded. We had till 12 p.m. to get across before the flood tide made it impossible for several hours into the evening. Luckily, we barely made our tide window and crossed the river with minutes to spare. North Ozette River ended up being my favorite camp of the trip. We had it all to ourselves and even got a brief break from the rain to dry our things out. It is a well-situated camp that screams Pacific Northwest coast. It was a very pleasant spot to camp at what would be our last night out. As we went to bed, rain from the next day's storm began pelting the fabric of our tents. We awoke the next day to a low tide and a brewing storm. At low tide I noticed tree stumps, with roots still planted and upright, but the trunks removed. They were all over the place. Is this evidence of a sunken forest that was flooded with seawater when the river delta subsided during a great earthquake? We had to get around Point of the Arches before high tide closed it off. The beach walk leading up to Seafield Creek was gray and dreary in the brewing storm. There were a lot of landslide scarps along the way, reminders of some of the dangers along the Olympic coast. After Seafield Creek, the route entered one last stretch of slippery rock scrambling. The rocks were coated with algae, wet and dangerous. Care had to be taken while racing the incoming tide. We knew we had to get to Shi Shi Beach, and it was not far to go, but the wind and rain were intense. Even the sea otters had to take shelter in rocky coves. The last couple of miles traveled were some of the hardest. We encountered numerous overland routes, straight up muddy hillsides, and back down to beaches, and then up again, all through overgrown, rain-dripping plants. Despite the hardships of this portion of the hike, it has some of the most impressive collections of sea stacks on the Olympic coast. By the time we were poised to go around the last point of land, we were as soaked as the forests we had just walked through. We've made it to Shi Shi Beach Camp. It rained a lot today. It was very windy. As soon as we got here, pretty much had to put the tents up and get in. A lot of time being tent bound on this trip. It's kind of the norm, I guess, if you want to hike the Olympic coast in early April. Really hoping it stops raining so we can have a good evening and hopefully get out of our shelters. And here's my soaking wet tent. Very nice sandy platform under this cover of trees. And it didn't take us long to find this spot after coming around Point of the Arches right there. Still pretty gray and humid out. And then Sarah has shown up with her nice clean clothes, dry. I'm so glad you're here.
Found 2 broken men and 1 broken tent.
Feel a little bit sorry for JR. His tent fell apart Yeah, the rain has not stopped. He lost his spoon.
I found it.
And he is using a mussel shell for a spoon to eat his last morsel of mashed potatoes. I guess this is the reality of hiking the Olympic coast. This is what it does to you.
All right, we've made a last-minute decision. Since it's the end, it's not that much further to the trailhead from here. We're gonna hike out one night early because JR's shelter is not in very good shape. Everything's wet, and we got a current weather report from Sarah. There's a lot more rain and heavy wind coming tonight. So we decided that we're gonna hike out right now, just end the trip as soon as we can. We did it. We came around Point of the Arches today. Definitely an epic congratulatory moment. Here we go.
One last look as we leave it enshrouded in mists. I'm left with a much found appreciation and a whole new meaning for Jade Coast.